Okay, well, my name is Iris, and I'm the business coordinator here at Barcoding and Barcoding Canada. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to geek out with us on labels. First, I just want to start off with a quick intro about us and our partner, Seagull Scientific. Barcoding is a supply chain automation and innovation company that helps organizations be more efficient, accurate, and connected. We have extensive subject matter expertise in data capture, labeling, printing, mobile computing, and we are trusted to build and manage solutions for some of the best IT and operations team in the world. We have offices all over North America. In the US, we are located in Linwood, Oak Brook, Baltimore, and Houston. And since 2019, we expanded to Canada and have offices in Markham, Vancouver, and Montreal. As for our partner, Seagull Scientific, they have been successfully producing the award-winning bartender software for labels, barcodes, RFID, and card printing since 1995. Bartender is available in 150 countries and offered in 20 languages. Seagull Scientific is also the world's largest developer of printer drivers for special applications printers referred to as drivers by Seagull. Their support to our customers is legendary, and you can trust my word on that one. Your hosts for today are Peter Zalinski and Lee Stevens. Peter is Barcoding's senior supply chain consultant and is no stranger in a lot of speaking events, both digital and public. If you are a frequent reader of our blogs, you'll see that some of the articles are written by him and also some case studies and things of that nature. Lee is the senior sales engineer and solutions consultant at Seagull Scientific and has over 20 years SC experience, especially on the access side of telecommunications. He'll be delving more into the technical side of the discussion. So thank you both to our panelists for being here today, and I ask that everyone feel free to use the Q&A feature of the presentation to ask their questions. Without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Peter.
Thank you very much, Iris. So we're going to talk about some of the key material handling traceability challenges, and I'm going to introduce this with some real-life examples, and we'll be focusing in on GS1 standards to kind of give us a target for what we're shooting for. Our goal is to make material handling data accurate, efficient, and connected. And the GS1 standards have given us the tools to allow us to identify, capture, share, and use that information. I'm going to get into that in a little bit of detail, but not too much, because GS1 standards is either a 1-hour class or a week-long discovery session. But let's set the context. Assume that you are receiving a pallet at your dock. Could be a receiving dock for a company, could be a receiving dock at a retail site, whatever it might be. This is pretty typical what you might be receiving. If there's something special that you're looking for, you've got a needle in a haystack problem, because somewhere on this pallet, underneath that shrink wrap, is a carton. Somewhere inside that carton is a case, and somewhere inside that case is the part that you want. The needle in the haystack is because you know that you want it, but the guy on the receiving dock has no clue. He just knows there's another pallet being delivered. The usual process that it's going to have to go through before you get to see that part that you want is this. It's a manual process. How long are you going to wait, right? He's got to go through all of these different steps. For manual process, this is a process of discovery. He's got to find the paperwork that matches up to the order, validate all these different elements before you can enter the receipt into the ERP system and put it away or expedite it. Depending on your operations, this could take anywhere from 1 to 4 hours, because everybody works differently. Sometimes it's a team, and this is generally the way things run. GS1 standards make this a whole lot more efficient, and they do that by allowing you to receive and unload the pallet based upon known information. You're going to compare the number on that bill of lading to the automatic advanced shipping notice that you receive from your shipper, from whoever supplied that, your provider for that material. You're going to be able to validate that immediately, match up the order, and enter the receipt into the ERP system immediately. That means you can spend your time on value-added tasks, which matching paperwork to numbers is not a value add, it's just kind of a necessary thing. Inspecting those goods, checking their quality, and putting them where you're expediting it. You can actually spend the valuable time that you have doing things instead of checking to see whether or not you're doing the right things. And that's the whole point of doing GS1 standards, to add that efficiency to the process, make it connected, and make it function. So you have to be able to identify things using a common language. If you're familiar with retail, you know UPC codes. That's kind of the foundation of GS1 standards. The UPC codes are a form of global trade identification number, otherwise known as a GTIN. And there's a whole hierarchy of information systems built around this GTIN so that we can all share information using a common standard and common structures. We can capture that information using barcodes or RFID or even IoT. And we know how to use that information within our own four walls to automate our interaction with the supply chain. And that's kind of the whole purpose of using these GS1 standards. So we get some value add activities out of using GS1 standards. Customer compliant labeling allows us to be more efficient on the receiving side and allows our customers to be more efficient on their side. So we're working both ends of the supply chain. You're probably already using serialized shipping container codes because virtually every transit company in the world wants you to use those. And virtually everybody else wants some kind of a serial number on that case or carton to identify that it's shipped from you. So you're using license plates. You're probably using ASNs and EDI for some of your partners. You might even have the option to be using some of that for some of your suppliers. But there's often a disconnect between the accounting function that wants that EDI and the receiving function that wants to validate the items on that. And they might not have visibility to that. Closing those loops allows you to become more efficient, more accurate, and more connected within your operation. Your whole goal is to be able to identify all of your handling units. So we're talking about not just that SSCC shipping container pallet label, but also having a label on the carton to identify the product and the lot number, and possibly what's in it. On the case pack, you want to have a label that also identifies that so that you can scan that information and move that around, identify it, capture it, and use that information within your four walls without opening the carton. And then last but not least, you want to be able to have that item permanently marked with similar information so that if sometime that part comes back to you, or if you're trying to repurchase that part, you've got identifiers on there that can tie that into your enterprise asset management system or whatever other way you have to track that part efficiently, accurately, and in a connected manner so that everyone's using common information. So GS1 standards give us the opportunity to identify, capture, share, and use that information within our four walls as well as outside of that four walls. But how do we get to that point? Sometimes we have to talk to our suppliers, but in a manufacturing environment, we have the option of starting that process right with the part. That adds a whole new dimension to things because now you're talking about traceability data within your four walls. And for that, I'm going to kind of pass things over to Lee to talk about how Bartender Enterprise can make sure that you're putting the right label on the right product or carton at the right time with the correct information using the proper workflows. So Lee, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. So let's go on to the bartender part of this. So I'm Lee Stevens with Seagull Scientific, and Peter, if you go ahead and move the slide. There we go. So Bartender 2021 is the latest version of our world-leading barcode software product. Seagull has been around for more than 35 years and has been doing barcode software for more than 30. We go back to the DOS days. That's how far back we go. Now, when it comes to labeling, there are really 6 things you always have to think about. What is the information that actually needs to be on the label? That's the first thing, because that's what a label really is it's a communications method. To make it easier to understand the communications, we need to know what size. How is the information supposed to look? How is it going to be printed or electronically sent? The next thing that we want to be concerned about is what is causing that label to print. Is it somebody manually entering something at a receiving point? Is it a sensor that finds a box is moving down and so a label applicator has to swing out? Or is this a whole bunch of labels that are going to be printed all at once so that they can be used just by somebody peeling them off as they go? What's the trigger? After that, we start to look at, okay, so we know what information we need to present and we know how it looks and what's triggering it. how is that raw data being given to us? Because we're going to have to do some conversions. So we need to know where is the data coming from and what's its structure. And that leads to the question of how are we going to get the data? Is this going to be on a piece of paper and somebody types it in manually? Is it going to be from scanning a barcode or reading the results from a scale? Or is it going to be coming from a database or a website? How is that information going to come to us? And then
You've
finally,
got a lot of
yeah, Peter.
opportunities there. I'm just going to kind of interrupt you, Lee. You've got a
Yeah.
lot of opportunities there to add value to your operation and make use of things that you already have in place, right?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, that's one of the great things about bartenders. We like to approach things from what we call a clean handoff standpoint. Almost every time we can set up the information exchange so that the other systems don't even really know bartenders there. They just know that they are providing a particular file format down a particular channel, and that's it. That means later you can go back and make changes on one side of that handoff without affecting the other side.
Now, if you're used to the legacy kind of approach to this, that used to be a flat file transfer in a lot of cases. I mean, that was like the ultimate commander trigger. But now you've got the capability of making a whole host of other options, everything from database connections to web service calls.
Yeah, actually, I kind of joke that if you could send the information to bartender in smoke signals, bartender could figure out a way of reading it. I actually, one time for fun, I figured out an approach that would make it work. We actually have 8 different ways that you can hand information off. It can be the file drop, which I think you referred to the first time, but it could be a web service calls are really where we're seeing a lot of growth right now, because everybody's moving their control plane over to a web browser. So why not use that same web browser to assemble the data and send it to bartender for the print?
Makes sense.
Yeah. And that goes to the last point, the integration, the automation, the management and control. Printing a label isn't just hitting a print. It's actually an entire communication step, tying to the customer at one end and then the product or service that the customer is wanting to get at the other end. And getting the right, as you said, the right label on the right item at the right time, that's what's adding the value.
So if we're talking about that system integration, we kind of alluded to that earlier. I think you mentioned, I think on a previous call, that Bartender 2021 has a lot more connections built in than it used to.
Yeah, we've really expanded, and we've been taking note of the shift, especially given the year 2020 has been, to things being more and more online. So we've added, as you can see here, new connectors for some of the more popular online data sources, as well as the .NET SDK or software development kit APIs that we've had for a very long time. So people can really kind of pick and choose how deeply they want to get into Bartender or how simply they want to keep it. And then the print portal. Let's talk about the print portal a little bit more later. That has been an enormous improvement with Bartender 2021. Why don't we move to the next slide? Yeah. So we were talking a little bit about some of the things, and Commander was how we used to do a lot of integration. Well, with Bartender 2016, we took Commander and completely reworked it. We don't even call it that anymore. We started calling it Integration Builder. And this is the hidden secret sauce for Bartender, because it can talk to anything.
Well, and not only that, you now have the capability of being able to schedule, roll forward, and roll back integrations in the same way you deploy software.
Exactly.
Instead of being a big red lever that you had to pull with Commander, it's now an automation tool that you can schedule and deploy and share.
And I'll tell you a little secret. It doesn't even have it, but you can use Integration Builder and not even actually generate a Bartender label, although that's what it was designed for, you could have it provide information to other systems as well. It's really this platform, an ecosystem that you can use to tie systems that don't like talking to each other together. And by the way, also print out lots of great labels. So yeah, now one of the things that in Bartender 2021 that we really focused on improving two things: the print portal that we'll talk about, but librarian. And this is really important for anybody who is operating in an industry that requires a lot of track, trace, and audit capability. Because one of the challenges is, how do I make sure that I am printing the latest version of a label, that it hasn't been accidentally or purposefully modified by somebody out in one of my remote locations? And who made the changes? Has this been approved? And this is where Bartender Librarian comes into play. It is a document management system. Now, we've had Librarian for some time, but we really took a new look at it and have significantly expanded it. It's got the ability to retain Bartender previous versions of Bartender documents, but it can be used for other files as well. It doesn't have to be a Bartender file. So we're seeing people actually starting to use this also to try and retain some management and control over things like the different images that they will use for printing. We've been put in workflows so that you actually can manage the life cycle of a label or a shipping list form or something like that. And you know that it's gone through all of the necessary approvals.
So from a manufacturer's viewpoint, you're now treating this label in the same way they treat any other product on their production line. It's got to be the correct, right revision. You can't be pushing out old parts onto new chassis. The whole kind of production command and control process is now centralized, essentially.
Exactly. And this also really helps on being able to take advantage of some of the new printing technologies that are out there, where instead of with the full color capability and the price per label of that coming down, rather than having to buy and then pre-printed labels and then throw away a lot of unused stock when you've made a branding change, for example. Bartender's Librarian allows you to make the change in the label and push it out everywhere automatically and have everybody on the new brand at the same time. This also works if you're in a regulatory environment and all of a sudden, boom, here's a new standard of what the UID format should include. You've got that kind of control.
If I've got 3 different plants producing the same parts, just in different parts of the country or different parts of the world even, if I make a modification to the rev and push out a new part number spec, I need to change the labeling for that and coordinate all of this. I can pretty much do that seamlessly in the background now using Librarian, so that my end users don't have to know that the rev is changing because they don't have access to anything incorrect.
Exactly. And you're able to make sure and prove that you went through the approval process that you have set up. Because with our workflows, you're able to notify via email. We have the audit trail for everything that's been going on. So if you are going through a certification process, people can tell. Yeah, here's a great example you can see on the left. That's an example of an email that was automatically triggered when a label was ready for final approval. And by the way, that final approval, you don't even have to be in Bartender to be able to do the review and approve. So
right within the email, basically, you're hitting a web service that's allowing you to approve or reject things in real time, pretty much as the email's there.
Exactly. It's actually another way that we're also putting Print Portal to use, because when you go to click on that link, it actually sends you to Print Portal and it'll pull up the new label for approval. And while you're in there, if you want, you could actually go back and compare it to the previous label. I just don't have a slide on that part, but very cool.
So you're talking about Print Portal earlier. You've kind of alluded to this a few times. Get into a little more detail on that, would you?
Yeah, so Print Portal is Bartender's web-based face to the world. Now it runs, going to get a little technical here, it runs on Windows IIS, which for Windows people, you know that that's something that you can install and load free from Microsoft. It comes with Windows. So it handles about half of all of the web platforms in the world. So it's good and it's reliable. Print Portal runs on top of that. What Print Portal does is actually now several things. It used to be mainly, oh, go here, click on this, and you can fill in a form for a label without actually being at that computer or running Bartender. We've enhanced it significantly. As you saw earlier, it can now help you look at and approve or disapprove of a new label version. We are also using it to support our new remote printing capabilities. So with Bartender and Print Portal, if you have somebody who is remote, maybe a customer, maybe a contract source, you're able to have them be able to print the label you want at their location without having to establish a VPN. They just go into Print Portal, log in, they see only what you want them to see, they click on it, Bartender is able to send it to their printer.
So and not only are you creating a web portal that's locally hosted, but if they expose that to the world, you're making sure that it's secure for only approved users, and they can print in their location from your website anywhere in the world.
That's right.
And what I've seen about Print Portal, just from a quick use standpoint, has been people that have a mixed device environment on the floor. So some people like working on their, their iMacs or their Macintosh. Some people are using, Android tablets as they wander around. Other people have these old clunky Windows 7/10 desktop environments where you don't want to install new software on there, and you don't have to. You just make sure they've got a decent browser and they're good to go.
Exactly. And this is Seagull addressing the fact that, one, it is not an all Windows world. Two, we are moving to a browser interface capability. I mean, everything is now being done through browser. And so your label printing should be done that way as well. And
makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and by the way, you don't, we also give you the ability to do your own custom branding, to including your logo, your colors, etc. So it really becomes your label printing interface to either internal or the world.
Nice. So I know we've been really focused here on the Bartender 2021 Enterprise Edition, but let's just take a quick step back and talk about just the fact that label design, and it's a great label design tool, right?
Oh yeah.
I've been using Bartender, I'm going to show my age here, back since about the Windows 3.1 days. I have installed Bartender using floppy disks.
Much easier now.
Yeah, thankfully. I mean, there's a lot of things that have gotten a lot easier with Bartender, from the licensing schema down through to the label design environment. It's very consistent. It's very Windows-centric. I think we talked about this earlier. What was your phrase? If you can create a PowerPoint, you can create a label.
Yes.
And I'll concur with that. I do a lot of training in Bartender for new users. And one of the big selling points for me for using Bartender, as opposed to literally any other labeling software, is the fact that I don't get additional support calls. I really don't. Once I get people trained up, they're pretty self-sufficient. And the only time I'll get a support call is when they're trying to extend the software beyond their own knowledge base, when they're trying to do something that either requires what I call IT magic, or a reframing of the solution so that they can actually use it with the tools that they have available. So
Yeah,
it's pretty
I think
powerful.
I think that's a pretty fair assessment, because that's what we see, and we work really hard to keep that and expand it. So, you know, the tutorials and guides we have available on our support site, I mean, that's a gold mine of information there. And we also have I get a simple get started video. Matter of fact, we've even rolled out a new starting with Bartender webinar that we're going to be doing once a month, that's focused just on how do I make a simple label? How easy is it? And half an hour, and we show you the step-by-step of building a simple label. And then from there, sky's the limit.
Pretty awesome. As we kind of flip through here, I think we talked about virtually everything on this slide. I'd like to go back just a quick step, because this manage all human interaction with labeling, that concept there. For me, that's been a big game changer with enterprise. And not to get too technical on it, one of the most awesome things about enterprise is, instead of hiding all of your label templates in folder directories all over the known universe, because Lord knows what file directories can get like on various servers, application servers, file servers, and cloud-based things. You've now moved with enterprise all of the label storage into a secure managed SQL database.
Yeah, and it really, really helps, because you can make sure, not only can you make sure that it's the right version of the label, you can make sure only the right people gain access to that label. And
those people don't have to have access to SQL.
Right.
Everything's single-threaded from Bartender, so you don't have to have multiple licenses out there for every known user because they're touching SQL. They don't know it's SQL. What they do know is that they get their labels on demand, that they get things printed appropriately, and that they're getting the right stuff at the right place at the right time.
Exactly.
And that, to me, is really the strength of it. We're used to using SQL as a backend for ERP systems and warehouse management systems and all kinds of different database functions. But imagine putting all of your labels, both as images and as designs, with all the logic around them, and throwing them into SQL so that they're accessible, addressable, and backed up regularly by your existing resources. That's awesome.
It also means that you don't end up with old versions floating around that somebody grabs accidentally, or somebody modified the label and then went ahead and used it and you didn't know.
Oh, yeah, no, I've seen that one a million times. I think my biggest pet peeve, and most customers' biggest pet peeves, is, oh, hey, we got a new part. Let's take an existing label and just copy, save as, rename, and then start building out on the production floor.
Oh,
without management approval.
Now you're triggering my intelligent template capability button, Peter.
We'll have to hit that in another discussion.
Okay.
That whole situation just makes me twitch when I see it happen.
Yes, I know.
So our focus today was on those key material handling and traceability challenges. We gave you the tools and kind of talked about, from an execution viewpoint, Bartender Enterprise allows you to get that right label on the right product at the right time with the right information and the right workflow, using a structured approach in the same way that you'd produce parts in a production line, using revision, using control, having management over that, and most importantly, which we didn't really touch on, having the capability to audit everything that happened. Not only who printed the label, but where that label was printed and at what time and in what place. Now, what types of labels are you printing? If you want your operations to be more efficient, if you want your supply chain to be more efficient, you need to be using material handling standards supplied by the GS1 organization. That allows you to identify things in a very consistent manner, capture, share, and use that information across your supply chain. That means getting away from dealing with your part number, the vendor's part number, the distributor's part number, all being three completely different things, You can link all that information to a single code, which is the global trade identification number, and share that across your platforms. Internally, you can call it widget number 7, but it's got a 14-digit number that's associated with that widget, and anybody in your supply chain can identify it in the same way. Makes things a lot more efficient from one end to the other. So we've now babbled on for a little bit over our 30-minute limit. Let's take a little bit of time out for questions and answers. What'd you find out there, Iris?
Sure. I've got 2 questions so far. The first one is there integration with both the US and Canadian versions of QuickBooks?
And the answer is yes. I don't have much to elaborate on.
Yes is a complete sentence, so that's all right. So the second question is, we have developed our own production order system. Do I have to use Bartender apps to generate prints, or can we write our own code to trigger it?
You can definitely write your own code. Matter of fact, I think, Peter, you kind of like those type of applications, don't you?
Oh, those are fun. And the main reason is then you're just using Bartender as your design and your integration tool. And from your own code, you're saying, give me this label at this time with this information on it. That's what it's designed to do.
What we've been seeing are actually a lot of hybrid approaches where people will write their own .NET calls for some things, but then, for example, with Integration Builder, they like the fact that it allows somebody who isn't a programmer to go in and be able to make some basic changes. And that means they free up their coding team for other things. So we are seeing a growth in hybrid solutions. Or have you been seeing that?
Oh, definitely. It used to be just we're going to use Designer as our front end, and then they transition to, okay, we're going to use the print station as our front end because they keep screwing up our labels in Designer. And now that they've added a lot more visibility, auditability, and control through automation, their system of record is now generating the value of, yeah, I need a label now, please give it to me. And the end user doesn't even know that Bartender is involved. I mean, Bartender works best when no one knows it's there, at least nobody on the production floor.
Yeah, we're sort of the secret sauce that's working behind the scenes in so many places and so many systems.
Mm-hmm. And centralizing that now, instead of having 72 copies spread out across your enterprise, consolidating that to a centralized license that is managed and maintained and audited cuts down on your cost because you no longer have all those spurious copies, and it also cuts down on some of the confusion on who knows what, where, and when.
Right.
I have one more question that just came in. The question is, have you tested with SAP?
So yeah, the short answer to that is yes. We work constantly with SAP, and we do it in a variety of ways. Peter, I don't know about you, but the growth I've been seeing, though, is there is a move away from direct integration and more towards using a web service call and then providing the data in either a XML, JSON, or CSV format. Are you seeing that?
Oh, totally. It used to be the file drop, from SAP using iDocs.
Right.
To a known file directory. And again, that's the old commander logic, and it works. You can continue deploying that if you've already got it into existence. But as you move forward with SAP and you start moving into SAP S/4HANA, you're dealing with a web environment. So make use of your web tools to integrate with Bartender. It's a lot easier than making a command line call or doing a file drop. It's just a URL with some data attached to it. And you're doing that natively within SAP and your developers. So they don't have to learn a new skill. They just have to learn a new address to send information to. Bartender will pick it up from there.
Yeah.
And I got 2 more. Sorry.
Okay.
Were you guys done?
No, go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. First question. Are there any plans for Bartender to be licensed any way other than a printer-based license for large install bases that find it cost prohibitive?
Yes, we do have some alternatives that are available. We do offer a subscription service, and that's actually been out there and running for some time. That would be one you would want to talk definitely with Peter and probably with us to make sure that that's one that's going to work best for you. But yes, we do have other options available.
Awesome. And second question, how does licensing work with Print Portal? If someone is printing off-site, how does the printer licensing work with PDFs?
Okay, so with the PDF, that's probably a circumstance where you would want to go to a subscription model. And again, we would want to talk with you about it. If you are going to, but one of the advantages is with the new print portal is you're able to download a print client service that resides, just a small little program resides on the remote PC. And through that, Bartender can see any printers that that person chooses to expose to Bartender. And then the licensing can work just as normal through there because Bartender is able to see it via the client service. And so in that case, there's no change to the licensing model.
And a follow-up to the first question, is there a minimum printer number required for a subscription-based service?
That would again be something we'd want to talk about as opposed to giving a hard figure. It's going to vary according to the circumstance. If you're only doing for a few printers, then it might be worth it to go ahead and keep the per printer license, because then you get unlimited prints. So definitely call and let's talk. We want you to have the best solution.
And one of the secret sauces behind this is any licensing model scales in different ways. And once you reach a certain threshold, the licensing model changes to allow you to take advantage of the underlying platform without necessarily being onerous. And that's the whole purpose behind that change to a subscription license.
Well put.
And it has its sweet spot. It definitely has a sweet spot.
All right, guys, I think that is all the questions I have. And I put in at the bottom just a general contact info for US and Canada. But as you can see on this slide, you can also email Peter and Lee directly if you have more questions. And yes, this presentation is recorded. And hopefully, if Zoom doesn't yell at me, it will be available on YouTube very soon.
Wonderful. Thank you, Iris, for putting this whole thing together.
Yes, Iris, thank you.
No problem. And thank you to all the attendees for staying with us for this long. And like I said, if you have any questions you want to take directly offline, contact info is here. You can always reach out to us via our website, which is also in the chat. And we hope to see you on our next webinar. Thank you, everybody, and have a good day.